Good morning. Today we are going to discuss about psychological factors in language learning. Let's discuss this topic today. I think this is most discussable, interesting factors in language learning. So, to introduction, now I'm going to tell about the process of language learning. Language learning ultimately occurs in the mind of learner. Mental structure or mechanism process and organize the language which the learner is exposed. Looking at the phenomena of teaching and the learning process in Indonesia, the problems which is commonly faced by the students is not only in terms of linguistic problems, but it's also concerned with non-linguistic problems. Besides, there are many factors that influence the success of learning, especially learning English as a foreign language. Flamiato states that those factors can be classified into two groups, namely internal and external factors. The internal factor commonly involves the internal aspects of the learners such as physics, psychological, and anxiety, while external factor may cover any aspects out of the learner's point of view, such as environment, school, family, and others. Some current studies in language execution suggest positive views toward the importance of exposure that linguistic input in promoting acquisition. It implies that teachers are required to use their target language and provide input as much as possible, since the learners are at the initial stages. In practice, however, to use their target language in classroom process, teachers are not free from dilemma, particularly when they are to teach beginners who still have low language proficiency. The dilemma is that, on the one hand, teachers are required to use the target language. On the other hand, the learners still have inadequate language proficiency. Therefore, teachers are required to modify their language in such a way in order to be appropriate with the level of the learner's proficiency. What characteristics does teachers' language consist of when they are in such dilemma? That question has led to the extent of the present study. Stephens found the external factors such as the characteristic of teacher, class, and the school condition had consistently no related with the success of learning foreign language. But on the other hand, students' psychological conditions as one of the internal factors were potential to influence the foreign or second language acquisition. Saha says that the most important factor influenced the result of study in the students' characteristics themselves. Samimi and Taboos agree that effective variables such as attitude and motivation play a strong role in determining students' linguistic performance in class. Oxford adds that affective side of the learner is probably one of the most important influence on language learning success or failure. The affective factors which are dominantly related to second language or foreign language learning are anxiety, attitude, aptitude, and motivation. In this paper, the discussions are focused on how the psychological problems such as anxiety, attitude, aptitude, and motivation influence the students in learning English as a foreign language. Some students' psychological factors psychological factor is a factor that is mentally or spiritually concerned with the aspects in students' acquisition. At least it involves four of many factors such as anxiety, attitude, and motivation, since they have been proved through some research findings. Now let's discuss. The first one is anxiety. Language anxiety is conceptualized as a situation-specific personality trait having two psychological components: emotional arousal and negative self-related cognition. Professor further stated that these components ostensibly interfere with the behavior instrumental to language learning and are more intense in people who are dispositionally high in language anxiety. In line with David, Brown states that second or foreign language learning is a complex task that is suitable or human anxiety, which is associated with feeling or uneasiness, frustration or self-doubt and apprehension. In addition, Schumann found that the anxiety provoked her students in speaking English in China. It happens especially when they speak the target language in public, especially in front of native speakers. Sometimes extreme anxiety occurs when English foreign language learners become or lost for words in expected situation, which often leads to discouragement and the general sense of failure. Brown said that adults, unlike children, are concerned with how they are judged by others. Yes, adults like me, I always think that my speaking, the other people, how they think about my speaking, my intonation, and others. And they are very careful about making errors in what they are saying, or making errors would be a public display or display of ignorance. That would be an obvious occasion of losing faith in some cultures, such as in Indonesia, China, and other Oriental countries. Clearly, the sensitivity of adult learners to make mistakes has been the explanation for their inability to speak in English without hesitation. Certain personality patterns will cause students to reach negatively to our verbal instructions and commands. For example, students with high anxiety level don't respond to motivational instructions, such as "it's important that you do well and this is count double on your grade," as well as people with lower anxiety levels. Most personalities respond more positively to praise than to punishment and blame. Thus, avoiding saying, "Why can't you learn this? It's so simple. My other classes didn't have any trouble with it at all. Tomorrow you can take the test whether you know it or not. Otherwise, the students will get frustrated." Now, let's move to the next psychological factor. This is aptitude. Aptitude is defined as the capacity to learn possessed by someone. Further, Skehan stated that aptitude is consistently the best predictor of language learning success. The existence of aptitude in foreign or second language learning is very influential. There is evidence in the research literature that some individuals have an exceptional aptitude for language learning. A research done by Corral to American students who took major in French, German, Russian, and Spanish showed that language aptitude is significantly associated with success in foreign language study. Obler reports that a man whom she calls CJ has such special ability. CJ is a native speaker of English who grew up in an English home. His first true experience with a second language came the age of 15 with formal instruction in French. CJ also studies German and Spanish and also Latin while in high school. At the age 20, he made a brief visit to Germany. CJ reported that just hearing German spoken for a short time was enough for him to recover the German he had learned in school. CJ worked in Morocco, where he reported learning Moroccan Arabic through both formal instruction and informal immersion. He also spent some time in Spain and Italy, where he apparently picked up both Spanish and Italian in a matter of weeks. There may be few learners like CJ, but research does show that human beings exhibit a wide range of aptitude for learning a second language. The work of Coral and in developing foreign language aptitude tests has provided extensive evidence that there is a special factor or an aptitude for learning a foreign language. They identify 4 factors serve as components of an aptitude for foreign language as follows. Phonetic decoding. This is the first one. This is an ability to discriminate among foreign sounds and encode them in a manner such that they can be recalled later. This would certainly seem to be a skill involved in successful second language learning. The second one, grammatical sensitivity. This is the ability to recognize that the function that words fulfill in sentence. It doesn't measure the ability to name or describe the function, but rather the ability to discern whether or not words in different sentences perform the same function. It appears logical that skills in being able to do this helps in learning another language. Another one is inductive language learning ability. This is the ability to infer, induce or abduct rules or generalization about language from sample of the language. A learner patience in this ability is less reliance on well-presented rules or generalization from a teacher or materials. Memory and learning. The last one. Originally, this was phrased in terms of association, the ability to make and recall associations between words and phrases in a native language and a second language. It isn't so clear whether this type of association play a major role in language learning, but memory for foreign language materials is clearly important. They claim 2 of these factors. Phonetic decoding and memory and learning do not correlate highly with intelligence. Foreign language learners may be better endowed in 1 or 2 of the factors. Certainly, the variance in aptitude that exists among foreign language learners is as great as that of shoe size. In another word, every foreign language learner has different number of aptitude. It varies from one to another. Now let's discuss attitude. Attitude is defined as a manner of acting, feeling, or thinking that shows one's disposition, opinion, and others. Attitude develops as a result of experience, both direct and which are greatly influenced by people in the immediate environment. Parents, teachers, peers, attitude towards self. I mean that yourself. In the target language and the people who spoke it, and the teacher the teacher Brown assumes that if he have a positive attitude toward the language learned, we will try hard to learn that language seriously. Some studies show that there is a positive relationship between attitude and the second language acquisition. Lambert found that the learner's tendencies and his attitude toward the target language determines the success in language learning in new language. In 1949, Jonas published a pioneering study on the topic attitude toward language as second language, and a year later he reported results showing positive correlation between measures of attitude and attainment in Welsh studied as a second language. One of his conclusions was that the strength of the correlation between attitude and attainment tended in increase. Students' attitude toward the language he learns may vary. He may feel excited, happy, confident, and adequate, or he may feel bored, frustrated, angry, and others. For example, when he becomes confused in a pattern drill, he may feel frustrated. After having repeated the same sentence a number of times, he may be bored. While composing a conversation with fellow students, he may feel excited and elated. Having been handed back a test he failed, he may feel angry and inadequate. This condition may influence students to decide whether he participates actively in the class or not. Yes, we face also like situations, our teaching or our life experience or teaching experience. In this case, he or other students does his homework or not, or they continues his foreign language study or drops it. We are, as English teachers, should have a big concern on the unfavorable students' attitudes by finding the causes and the possible solutions. Smith classifies some unfavorable students' attitude on foreign language learning as dumb attitude, irrelevant attitude, and bored attitude. Now, last but not least, we discussed motivation, a psychological factor frequently used to account for differential success in language as second language is motivation. This has it makes sense that individuals who are motivated will learn another language faster and to a greater degree. Furthermore, numerous studies have provided statistical evidence that indicates that motivation is a predictor of language learning success. Gardner, in early work with Lambert and in later work with colleagues at the University of Western Ontario, is the primary figure in the field of motivation in second language learning. Motivation involves four aspects: a goal, affordable behavior, a desire to attain the goal, and a favorable attitude toward the activity in question. He differentiates between two types of motivation: integrative and instrumental. Integrative motivation refers to motivation that comes from a desire to integrate with the target language. This motivation community. Instrumental motivation comes from the rewards that might come from the learning. This English. Learning English in order to study mathematics in English speaking. Integrative motivation is hypothesized to be a better predictor of a second language success than instrumental motivation. Meanwhile, nation thus divides motivation into primary motivation and the secondary motivation. Primary motivation, in which the interest comes from the learner himself and not from the outside the learner. To get this type of response from learners should be a must for all teachers. If the teacher can make the learners feel that they want to learn, that they are interested, the subject they are studying is exciting. Secondary motivation refers to the feeling of the learners that they must learn in order to pass a test, or avoiding punishment, or to please his parents or teachers. Fostering students' motivation to attain a foreign language achievement is very important. Another professor advises teachers for fostering motivation as follows. The first one, freedom for fear. Learners shouldn't be embarrassed if they have not done their assignment, if they make error in production, or if they cannot respond immediately. The second one, understanding. Teachers must consider the socio-economic, cultural, or emotional background of the learners in order to help them maintain their pride in themselves. The third one, experience. Learners must engage in a wide variety of activities in order to fulfill their need for thinking, learning, doing, or choosing. The last one is love. The teacher often has to take the role of substitute parents and be aware of the hunger for affection of the learner who rightly or wrongly or feel rejected by family or peers. Let's say another one, grouping and individualization. The teacher should be aware of the level at which each student is capable of operating at any moment in time, of his or her optimal way of learning, of the time he or she needs to learn, and should follow classroom group and individual activities to take all these factors in account. Here what is such kind of factors we can take this, we count this. To extend motivation demands a well-balanced combination of the teacher's art and skill. It isn't enough for teachers to make use of psychological principles of the weather schools to motivate learners. The teacher can also foster motivation through his or her own sense of security resulting from adequate linguistic and methodological preparation. As a whole, motivation in second language acquisition may be tough as the incentive, the need or the desire that the learner feels to learn the second language. With the regard of motivation, like all type of learning, motivation to learn a language is undoubtedly important in the success or lack of success in learning. According to Duley, there are three kinds of motivation affects language acquisition: integrative motivation, instrumental motivation, and social group identification. Integrative motivation may be defined as the desire to achieve proficiency in a new language in order to participate in the life of the community that speaks the language. It reflects a sincere and the personal interest in the people and the culture represented by the other group. The problem occurs in the case is that if the learner feels that he is able to communicate with the intended society, usually he will stop to learn the language. Also, he consider it low or not or enough, such kind of. So the next one, let's move the next one. We say that another professor said as and states that attitude and the motivation are related to achievement in the second language learning, and that integrative motivation orientation in particular makes more successful learning than motivation of instrumental orientation. Students whose motivation to study a language as an instrument to get something, those who is categorized in having instrumental motivation, tend to have lower achievement than students whose integrative motivation. Social group identification may be defined as the desire to acquire proficiency in language or language varieties spoken by a social group with which the learner identifies. Conversely, the lack of the identification with a given group may result in a learner not wanting to acquire the language or language varieties spoken by that group. And the Professor Do states that social group identification motive is similar to the integrative motive, but in our interpretation goes beyond it. Learner with an integrative motive for learning a new language would wish to participate in the social or cultural life of the target language speakers while retaining their identification with their own native language group. Let's conclude our discussion, our topic. The description about students' psychological factors such as anxiety, aptitude, attitude, and motivation contribute the success in language in learning English as a second language. Those factors have a significant evidence proved by some research findings mentioned earlier. In addition, three kinds of motivations are also affect language acquisition: integrative motivation, instrumental motivation, and social group identification. 5 stages are significant considered for coping with language anxiety. Among of them are preparation, strategy, relaxation, positive thinking, peer, and labeled resignation. Preparation refers to attempts at controlling the impending trait by improving learning and study strategies. Relaxation involves tactics that aims at reducing some anxiety symptoms. Positive thinking is characterized by such kind of functions of superior problematic cognitive process that underlie students' anxiety, and others we count earlier. Finally, to maximize the result of the second language acquisition, the 5 stages illustrated above are important as an alternative solution for the foreign language teachers, and it's necessary for the second language teachers to have a great concern to the students' psychological factors during the process of language acquisition, and always conclude or mention these factors while teaching or learning. Thank you for your attention.